This is 11 honors, and we're talking about William Blake today, romantic poet, and Isabella just remembered that he was a social justice guy. Yes.
Wasn't his work became known after he died?
Yes. Doesn't that seem like a shame? Like, he's one of the great poets in England, and he never lived to know that. You'd hope that if that ever happens to you, whatever it is, that, like YouTube is instant, or Twitter, whatever it is. That other thing. What's the other thing? TikTok. I keep up. That's instant. You get to know, and you get a count. There's something wrong with instant. It always is. But this is an example of what's not instant. You die, and then 100 years later, after you die, you become world famous. They sing your song. The nation of England has adopted your song as one of its national anthems, and you don't live to see it. I mean, that's like the opposite of why people post TikTok. They want to be instantly famous. I'm not sure being famous is important anyway. But anyway, that's a really good point. It always kind of saddens you when you realize that you could have been famous when you were alive. You'd have enjoyed that. He's also the visionary, which I'm going to promise you I'll look for some pictures, artwork of Blake. All right, well, he wrote the poem The Lamb, and we talked about that yesterday. Do you remember anything about it? About a lamb?
It was like...
Oh, yeah, if you need a copy of the book, it's over there. It's in the book, the poem, but if you have it, it's on page, what page is it on? 4.
It was like the lamb was, how do you say it? Apostrophe?
Yes.
Apostrophe or was the lamb was the apostrophe, which
Right.
meant that the poet was addressing something that couldn't respond.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was cleverly done because the speaker was playing on these words, like the Jesus, the Creator, took the name of the Lamb. So Jesus, the Creator, became the Lamb, right? He created the Lamb, but he identified with the Lamb, so he became the Lamb of God. And he also identified with us because he was born as a child. And the speaker is a child, either a literal child. What was the other option? Instead of, he's literally a young child, he could be a child of God. He could be an adult, but he's referring to him as a child. But either way, you have Jesus identifying with both lamb and child because he was born as a child. So that tells us something about the Creator. We don't have a distant Creator. We have a Creator who identifies with us, became one of us. And I think that, and what did we say, the tone? I thought that was an important thing to know. Isabella might have done it. You might have said it, Sarah. Remember what we said? It was like, it sounded like?
It was like a lullaby.
Yes, like a nursery rhyme. I think Isabella used the word nursery rhyme. So yes, and it's appropriate if you're going to talk about sort of child things to say so in a child way. It would be inappropriate to talk to children with big words and frightening images. These are all simple and pleasant. So that's what makes great. One of the things that makes great poetry is the content, but also the form. The form has to match the content. I have something I want to show you, but I won't do it right now. It's actually, I want you to hear. It'll support that idea that the form has to match the content. All right, so he wrote this companion poem called The Tiger, which I read to you yesterday, and I asked you to read it again and do the questions. But would one of you ladies, I'd call on you, but if one of you could read it, I read it yesterday. You can read as well or better than I can out loud. How about Isabella, would you read it? The Tiger's on page 7.
Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or
sinews.
sinews of thy heart. And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain, and what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread gasp, dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his word to see? Did he who made the lamb and sea, tiger, tiger, burning bright in force of the night? What immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry?
All right, thank you. So let's you answered them. I gave you credit for that, but let's go through that. This poem also has an apostrophe. We said an apostrophe is what? Can you tell Aurora? Sarah, you did earlier. What is an apostrophe?
A poet, it's when a poet addresses something that can't respond.
Right. Either because it's a tiger or a lamb, or because the person is not in the room. You know, you're looking out the window and you're talking to her, but she's not here. I guess those are the two. If the person is absent, or it's not a person at all. It could be an idea. It could be a thing. That's an apostrophe. All right. So the first thing we need to do. Remember, all poetry can have two parts to it: the literal and the figurative. So you have to take both into consideration when you read it. So let's look at the tiger. Let's assume the tiger is literal, and I think he is talking about a literal tiger. So what are the characteristics of the tiger that you notice? What does the poem say about the tiger? Isabella, and I know you just looked at this, Aurora, but please jump in there. What does it say about that? What characteristics does the tiger have?
I said that it invokes fear.
It says fearful symmetry. So, yes, very good. For good reason. The tiger can destroy you and me. We don't have a chance, unarmed, against the tiger. What other things are used to describe the tiger?
It says like birth the fire of thine eyes. I don't know.
Of course, that would not be literal,
Yeah.
right? But what is that? What is it suggesting about the tiger?
Because he's like fierce.
It just fits that pattern, doesn't it? I mean, you gotta be careful with fire. You gotta be careful with the tiger. You don't mess with either one of them. Anything else? I've noticed it talks about. Yeah, well, that's not talking about the tiger. So this third stanza. Look at the fourth stanza. It's deadly terrors class. So I think he's talking about the tiger there. So he's fearful. And fire is fearful, and he's deadly. He can actually kill you. And it keeps pointing out the burning part, that the tiger is burning. That fits with the fire in his eyes. The tiger's not burning, so what do you think it means that he's burning? It's the first line, tiger, tiger, burning bright. Last stanza, tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. Same. So what does it mean he's burning in the forest? It's not literal. See, some things in here probably it is fearful, but what do you think is being described there? You've seen tigers, of course. What color are they?
Bright orange.
Excuse me, I have to. So that you make sure. They are orange and white, and aren't they? Are there other colors? Black? All right. So why is that a good description of a tiger? He's not really burning, but yes, the color of fire or the sun. All right, so what is what question does the poet or speaker continue to ask the tiger, who cannot answer? What is the question that he keeps asking? Yeah, it's the same question he asked the lamb. You could get close to a lamb and ask the question, even though the lamb's not going to answer back. You're not going to get that close to the tiger to ask the same question. So, all right, number 3. What does his creation reveal about the Creator? What did the lamb poem tell us about the Creator? We said that. What did we say about what the Creator does for the lamb?
You like provided it with food.
He not only created the lamb, he provides for it. Provides protection, food. And he seems to enjoy the lamb. He says the lamb makes all the vales rejoice, has a tender voice. So the question here is, what does the fact that he also created the tiger reveal? So he's like the lamb. He said he was the Lamb of God. So he's tender, he's meek, he's mild. Because they took him to a cross, he didn't fight back. The same Creator created the tiger. What does this tell you about the Creator? Same person. He created the sweet, innocent, tender lamb, but he creates this thing too.
It's like he can create both. Like he's
Yes.
just all powerful in a way that.
Go ahead, say that
It's
again.
like all powerful in a way that he can create. Like,
And what about the things he creates?
like
He's powerful as a creator, but as a creator, he can create tender and sweet, but he can also create
fierce.
something
like
that
strong.
something that rip your heart out,
Yeah.
literally. What does that say about the Creator? The fact that he does both. I mean, people love Jesus, right? Because they see him as tender and meek and mild, and he's sweet. He's holding the lamb. We've seen pictures. But what is Jesus also going to do one day? And the Father has already done. Besides just create and sustain, what is the Creator also going to do someday? He's what?
He's gonna come down.
What's he going to do when he gets here?
Judge us.
He's taking names. He's taking care of business, the business of judgment, and it's not going to be pretty for those who are not saved. And so God has the ability to be angry, to be fierce. He has the ability to be sweet and to be tender, but he also, and if anybody doubts that, I think these poems are a perfect example. Or just take a real lamb and take a real tiger. Wouldn't the creator of the tiger have some fierceness in him? Because he created, the whole idea of fierceness is created by God. So whatever you see, and you have Bibles with you. It's always a good thing, and mine's over here, but I have some Bibles. If anybody needs one, I'm going to ask you to look at it. Where are my Bibles? I have 3 here. This one looks like it got wet, but it was pretty wet. You can write this down in your notes. What's in the notes? Romans 1:19 through 20. So I'm turning to Romans. It's the New Testament. So they're just 2 verses there. Well, I'll start with 18. Romans is right after Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Acts in the New Testament. And it's the sixth book in the New Testament. All right, so I'm going to read 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. This is the principle here. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so that they are without excuse. So what is that verse saying about, if you don't know anything about the Bible and you don't know anything about God, where can you go to find out about God? It says so right there. He says, for what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For the invisible attributes, his eternal power and nature, have been clearly perceived ever since creation of the world in the things that have been made. So one simple way of learning about the attributes of God is to look at what God made. So if God made the lamb, it shows us that God can be sweet and tender. If not only if, he did make it, but because God made the tiger, he can be fierce and scary. That's what the Bible says, and that's what William Blake is saying. That just look at his creation. Here, just pick two. One, a tiger and a lamb. And it tells you the two of the possibilities, not possibilities, but two of the attributes of God. Does that make sense to y'all? Okay, so just note that Romans, and it does answer the question of what does the creation reveal about the Creator? The answer is that God's invisible qualities can be seen in the visible things that he created. It says one place in the Old Testament that idols, the statues have eyes, but they don't see. They have mouths, but they don't speak. So you could make a statue of a person, and you would, the statue's not alive, it's not real. However, God made the eye. Do you think God can't see? God made the ear. Do you think God can't hear? God made the mouth. Do you think God can't speak? So the idea is, if there is such a thing as eyesight, then it came from God who has eyesight. If there's such a thing as hearing, it came from God who has hearing. And if there's such a thing as words and a voice, then it came from God who also has words and a voice. That's not going to help you be saved, go to heaven, to know those things, but they are true about him. Does that not strike you as, you could prove God exists by that to me, you could prove to some unbeliever God exists, because how did you get eyesight? Because the Creator's image is stamped on you. If you can see, that means he can see. If you can feel sorry for some people, then he can feel sorry. If you could get angry, that means he can get angry. Because he created the whole concept of anger and sympathy and eyesight. We reflect God. We look at each other. C.S. Lewis said, if we saw each other as God sees you, we would be tempted to bow down and worship each other, because we'd say, whoa, what an incredible creation. That's how God sees us. Great stuff. Look at, and we'll get through the rest of this quickly. All right, so look at number 4. What effect does the imagery in the poem create? And to whom is the Creator compared to, especially in the 4th stanza? Look at the 4th stanza. How is the Creator characterized? What is he described as? Yes.
Is it kind of like a weapon? It says like anvil, and like usually you make like weapons of like
Yeah,
swords.
anvils are objects that make iron weapons and tool implements.
So,
But rather than the weapon itself, who creates the weapon on the anvil? A blacksmith. So God is described as a blacksmith. That's, if you didn't pick up on that. And so rather, you think about the hammering of a blacksmith, the sparks going up the fire, that's God making the tiger. So what's different? This is number 5. What is the tone of the poem? And I included words like fearful, dare, dread. Remember, Isabel, you said it was a nursery rhyme. This is no nursery rhyme. This would scare the little kids. They couldn't sleep all night if you read this to them. So it's not a nursery rhyme. It's not a lullaby. What is it? What's the tone of it? Like what kind of feeling do you get having read it with considering those words that are in it? What's a word that would tie those words together?
Horror.
What's that word?
Horror.
Horror. I'm surprised you use that word. That's a good word. But the reason I'm surprised because it's talking about God. So what are you saying? Because you know that the feeling of the poem, like you say, it is akin to that feeling you get horror when you see something. Knowing that it's about God, what do you mean?
Like the fear of God.
Yeah, going back to the fear of God. This is the fierceness and fear of God. That, as opposed to the sweetness and tenderness of the lullaby. And then finally, number 6, and I think we made the point already, but maybe one of you could repeat it. So since Blake wrote 2 poems about God that seems completely different, what do the 2 together say about God? It's kind of what we said earlier. But what does this say about God that both poems speak about God's characteristics?
He can be sweet, but then he can also be bitter.
Exactly. Very good. He is both those things. And I think that's why I love these 2. Because it shows you that God is judging and forgiving at the same time. He forgives, but if there's also that element of fierceness and of punishment. Good job. Let me see, what are we talking about time-wise? Yeah, why don't we do the shorter poem? So turn the page. No, not turn the page, sorry. Look back on the previous page. At the bottom of the page, the 6 rows, there's some questions here. And we can do these together. Rory, do you mind reading the 6 rows poem? Well, I tell you, yeah, read it, and then we'll all read it again. It's on page 6 of the book. Is it 6?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. My book has a different cover than yours, but it's the same book.
O rose, thou art sick, the invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm, hast found out thy bed of crimson joy, and his dark secret love does thy life destroy.
Thank you. Read it again. We always read, Aurora mentioned the other day to them that we always read poems twice, particularly because they're usually short. And with a pencil maybe, if you see anything that looks interesting.
O rose, thou art sick, the invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy bed of crimson joy, and his dark secret love does thy life destroy.
Okay, before you answer the questions, anything strike you like you've heard it now twice?
The invisible worm that flies in the night.
That's kind of creepy, isn't it? A flying worm. It says worm, but worms are a lot like snakes, and flying snakes would be more like a dragon, wouldn't it? Right? It's kind of like a dragon. Anything else about it strike you? All right, we'll see what you can do with these questions. There are just a few here. And remember, apostrophe, you speak to something that's not present or it's not human, cannot respond. You know what an allegory is? You remember what an allegory is? It's a story it's a poem that has two meanings. One literal, like this is just about a rose and only a rose. And secondly, it's figurative. I mean, it's not just a rose. Rose represents something else. Allusion is a reference to something in the Bible, in literature, in history, or in mythology. This is really interesting little poem. Anybody need more time? All right, so let's take a look at this. Aurora, why don't you start for us? What is the apostrophe and what two meanings could it have?
I said the apostrophe seems to be the rose, and I think that the rose could possibly be like a person.
By the name of Rose, yes.
Yeah.
Or, and, what else could it be? If it's an allegory, that means it would be literally a rose. I don't know if this asked you this, but what's the evidence for it being literal? Like, how do we know it? This could be literal. Sorry. Like, if it's literal, what's the poem about? This is the answer to question number 2. If it's literal, what is the poem about? Isabel, what's the poem about? If it really is a rose here. Yeah, well, how do roses get sick? We don't usually, flowers are sick. You don't say that, but what could kill a rose? What sort of things could kill roses?
No sun.
No sun or too much sun, it could dry it out, right?
No water.
Yeah, those things could kill it. What else?
Insects.
Insects. Now, I know worm's not an insect, but it could represent an insect, so it could be killed by an insect. That it's invisible though. There are no invisible worms except. Can't they get diseases too? I mean, they get mold, and I'm sure some of these. So, the invisible worm that flies in the night, it could be a disease of some kind. What does it mean? He has found out thy bed. If it is a real rose, what do roses have beds?
Soil.
The flower bed. Yeah, that's what we call it. So you're right. And it could kill, let's say the worm is a literal worm, because worms could do it too, I guess. What does it mean, his dark secret love destroys thy life? How does the worm love the rose?
Worms like put stuff in the soil.
What's that?
Don't worms like put stuff in the soil for plants?
You mean good, like fertilizer, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, like, aren't like worms like good for plants? 'Cause they.
Well, maybe, but this worm seems to kill how does the worm kill a flower?
Eating.
Eat it. So when it says its love destroys the life, so what? It loves to eat the flower. You don't think of it that way, but the worm enjoys, it's eating the flower because it needs nourishment, so he loves the flower. What's the other meaning of the poem? Say Rose is not a flower, but a person. So how do you read the same poem that way? Not a rose who gets killed by a worm or a disease or an insect. What is it about? We're almost got to leave here, so what do you think? If Rose is a person, what happens to Rose at the end of the poem?
She dies.
She dies. What killed her?
A sickness?
Yes. But what if it was this business about love? And it could be a sickness. But what else could it be? Like, it could be a literal sickness that kills her. What other kind of sickness could kill her? It uses the word love in here. Like, could it die of a broken heart? How does love kill somebody? Maybe it's withdrawn and you feel like you're going to die because of that. What could the invisible worm be there? Could be the broken heart. What else could it be?
person?
A person who betrayed her, could be jealousy, you know, it could be envy, also this could kill the person in the love. So we answered 2, and we already talked about 3. I'm not sure about the illusion. There's a lot in that little poem. All right, so you're working on, we'll do the other one tomorrow. There are 2 more I'd like to do, maybe just one. But we'll do that tomorrow, and I won't see you again until Tuesday, so you need to be working on your paper and vocabulary and